Sanctions have been imposed on 82 individuals and 29 companies. German payment provider Wirecard went bankrupt on Tuesday.
Russia has launched an unprecedented disinformation campaign against...
Billions of dollars have been found in various offshore accounts.
Welcome to Integrity Insights, the Berlin Risk Podcast. Hello everyone, after a short summer break, we are back with another episode of Integrity Insights. And today we are joined by Jan Indra, who is a threat intelligence liaison at Resistant AI. Jan works at the cutting edge of defending financial institutions and fintechs against fraud, money laundering, and other threats that target automated systems. In our conversation, we dive into how criminal tactics are evolving, why threat intelligence is becoming a critical piece of financial crime prevention, and what organizations can do to stay ahead. It is a really fascinating conversation about the future of financial integrity, and I hope you enjoy it as much as we did. Right, Jan, welcome on the podcast.
Hey, Philip, how you doing?
Doing good. So let's start with a brief intro. Why don't you tell us who you are and what do you do?
Sure. So my name is Jan, as you know, and I have worked in the financial crime prevention / detection space for about a decade. Started off as an investigative journalist for a couple of years. Transitioned into working as a consultant, doing a lot of both short-term and long-term investigations and due diligence projects. And most recently, about a year ago, I've joined Resistant AI, a Prague-based startup focusing on document fraud detection and suspicious transactions detection. And now I'm here to help develop the threat intelligence function, as we call it. We focus on not only on fraudsters themselves. Those are the kind of entities that we come in touch with, analyzing the submitted documents or the flow of transactions. But I think for us, it specifically means researching, understanding, and investigating something that I call fraud enablers. So not necessarily fraudsters themselves, but the kind of individuals or groups or entities that make financial crime possible and easier for all the people out there. So we started the threat intelligence unit, with the clear goal of not only do we develop the kind of industry-leading software to detect this kind of stuff, but we also need to be the ones who have the best understanding of where are these threats coming from, who's acting on them, how do they look like, what's the volume, what's the sort of geography, anything that comes, and any sort of data points we can look at, right? So in hopefully a good enough explanation, which is quite short, obviously, we could go much deeper into this, but that's the kind of stuff
that helps definitely. But the broader context is that the company itself, Resistant AI, sells, as you said, an industry-leading software to basically help companies prevent this type of fraud.
Yeah, so we just quickly reiterate. We focus on two major aspects. That's fraudulent documents and suspicious transactions, right? So we have two flagship products. One is the document forensics tool, and the other one is the transaction monitoring tool. And at the end of the day, something I think we're going to get into with our conversation as well today is that they are very much interconnected, right? Financial crime doesn't happen in isolation. The issue of fraudulent documents and fraudulent transactions is very much interconnected.
And the threat intelligence unit that was launched when you joined over a year ago, or had it been already in existence before?
So I think that was the main reason for me coming over, was to start doing this, I always say, systematically, right? So I think, there were bits and pieces of threat intel done before I joined, but there was a clear understanding that we need to do this on a consistent basis, develop a set of processes, understand all the things that we're looking at. And it keeps on developing, I think even after a year of doing this, to me, it still seems a little bit like a beginning of a long journey, because we're just now getting to understand, how big some of these, underground markets, whether it's a market for fraudulent documents or a market for fraudulent accounts, how big some of these markets are, and how much more research and investigations we need to actually do to have an even better understanding and a clearer picture of how serious things are.
I mean, I don't know if this is the best way to approach this, because this is obviously a huge topic, but I mean, you can present this, in whatever way you want, but maybe I can just ask you, like, over the last year that you have been looking into this, what are some of the, the main findings that you and your team you have discovered?
Mm-hmm. So I think, for, let's say, the first 9 months or so, the main focus of the threat intel unit was research and identification of something we call a template farm. A template farm can be a website, it can be a Telegram user or channel, it can be a forum, web forum thread. There's different forms it can take, but essentially a template farm is an entity that specializes in selling fraudulent document templates, right? So within the, let's say, website context, it's a basic online shop where you can find hundreds to thousands of fake documents that you can purchase and edit to fit whatever needs you might have. Of course, usually probably with the intention of some financial crime purposes. A quick fun fact here: a lot of these sites sometimes would try to mention that their products are only supposed to be used for novelty purposes, right? So like the use in film or entertainment and that kind of stuff. It's a kind of a very funny sort of, legal disclaimer, which is not a legal disclaimer by any means, but it's funny to see sometimes how farmers try to act as they try to prevent their templates from being used for illegal purposes. Of course, they very well know who most of the or where most of customers, I think, are coming from and with what motivations.
And how do you go about like finding these? Is it first of all, is it all kind of easily findable, available on the open web, or do you have to go like deeper? Or
I think as in I dare I say a little bit of a seasoned investigator myself by now. Before I started doing this research, I thought this might be a thing of the dark webs, or something that's harder to trace or harder to identify, because we know these cases from drug trade or human trafficking. But it turned out to be exactly the opposite, right? Meaning, even if you quickly Google for something like fake Deutsche Bank statement or something like that, you will not only find hundreds of thousands of results, but a lot of those results will be the websites of these template farms, meaning they try to attract the widest possible audience or customer base. So in that sense, they even need to be easily searchable and easily findable. So these websites are very much out there, not on the dark web, but something we call the deep web, right? But these sites are being indexed by Google. It seems these template farmers are using some SEO tactics to optimize and try to get their websites to rank as high as possible. And it gets a little trickier, I think, with the let's say Telegram channels or maybe some Discord servers, where sometimes you might not be able to access something straight off the bat. You need to either request permission to join or something like that. But at the end of the day, I think even with the monitoring of these channels, usually we're able to, of course, get in and see the communication unfold in real time. So at the end of the day, I would say most of this stuff is widely accessible if you know where to look, obviously.
And I mean, it's called template farm. So the way it works is that if you want to fake, your identity for whatever reason, you would buy a template and then do what with the template?
Mm-hmm. So there's different ways of what you can buy and how, but I think obviously the sort of most standard way is, yes, you buy a template, which can be usually a PDF, but it can also be a PSD file. It could probably be an Excel or Microsoft Word file. In some cases, it might even be an image, right? But the idea is that you download or obtain the template and then you edit it yourself, putting in the personal details you want, whether it's identity, transactions, anything of that nature. And then you use that fake document to, onboard a fraudulent account, or, submit a loan application that might be fraudulent because you provide the incorrect income or earnings details. There's definitely a wide variety of uses. And when we go back to how you use these templates, well, obviously the first thing that comes to mind, as I just said, is you edit it yourself, but it's not the only way. There's definitely farmers that offer editing services as a bonus to the templates themselves, so they will edit the documents for you if you want. Or there's even, a specific type of farm we call a generator, which is a farm where you would not buy the template first, but you would first provide the details, and then they would generate the document for you straight away. And that one is especially dangerous because these tools can also do something we call batch generation of documents. So let's say if I had like a stolen database of personal information, some Excel sheet with something like hundreds to thousands to even maybe millions of rows, I could probably feed that tool with that spreadsheet and generate fake documents for thousands of people in a very short span of time.
Mm. And do you have any understanding what are the most popular type of fake documents?
Definitely. So we, try to track and monitor the offering of all these websites that we have found. So far, we've found, around 150 of these template farm websites. And we are also, monitoring over, I think, 130 different Telegram channels that, advertise this type of activity. So we have a pretty good look into which documents are being offered the most. And so by far, I think the most popular document type is bank documents, whether it's account statements, confirmations of account, basically a document that is issued by a financial institution, and again, it can serve numerous purposes. So that's by far, the most popular one. I think it's because we have cataloged already over 300,000 of these template offerings. I don't say templates on purpose because there is always some level of duplicity, but at the end of the day, we've seen more than 300,000 different offerings. So the bank documents take up around 1/3 of all the document offerings we've seen. Then obviously another highly popular group would be IDs, utility bills, pay stubs or income confirmations, that kind of stuff. But also, I think something that we tend to think of as, widely used, sort of ubiquitous commercial documents like receipts, invoices, booking documents, that kind of stuff. So really, I always tend to say that the account farmers don't really discriminate based on document types. They try to sort of have an offering for everything. I could cite, one is kind of, I would say, obscure document type, even though it's actually not that obscure at the end of the day, that I've seen being offered is death certificates. Like I can say that I didn't have much knowledge of how death certificates are used or how they're even issued, but seeing that there's a death certificate template for virtually any country makes you think around, well, how could this kind of a fake document be used? How would an institution from Europe even verify a death certificate that is issued somewhere in, the Pacific or some small African country? Like you get to think about these, like, obviously to some degree abstract, but to some degree also, I think, really happening scenarios. Because we have seen, for example, that death certificates are also being faked by some people, whether it's some inheritance cases or maybe some insurance fraud cases, even a document type like that can be sort of offered by the template farmers and demanded by fraudsters.
Mm. I mean, that it is fascinating, really, like to learn about this. How many, that there's so much you can kind of easily purchase online. I guess my main question when I hear you talking about this is, what is then? I don't know. Obviously, like this might be quite difficult for you to assess, but I'm going to ask it anyways. What is then the success rate, let's say, of those documents when whoever buys it online then presents it to the bank, or whoever demands this document? Like, do you have any way to kind of assess how likely you are to succeed with this document?
So I think that is a very, very complex question, because there is a huge number of factors that come into play, right? We kind of estimate that usually around 1 in 4 documents might have been tampered with, but it's important to note the tampered with expression here, because it might, when a document has been edited or manipulated digitally, it doesn't always have to mean that it was done with the intent of committing fraud. So that kind of an estimate, considers all the possible motivations or reasons for document modification. And then I think you get into, the success rate really depends obviously on the quality of the fake itself and how diligently that was prepared, but also on the level of risk appetite of the institution where it's being submitted, or the controls being set up, right? What might, a fake document that might be able to breach one platform might not be able to breach the KYC process of a different platform because it's using better tools or it's set up in a better way. We definitely keep seeing, that the risk appetites vary, and for good reasons, because it's tied to the segment you operate in and what are your motivations or your reasoning, as well as what's the document journey, what kind of formats of documents you sort of allow people to submit, right? Is it just PDFs? Is it images? What's the sort of whole document journey from uploading a document or submitting a document to that document being evaluated? So I think all of these factors come into play, and it's hard to, we do try to estimate some sort of percentages of fraudulent documents within different segments. It can be anywhere from, let's say 5% all the way up to something like 20%, right? Which, at the end of the day, this kind of, analysis we do as well on some subsample of the documents submitted tells you the actual number of documents that are labeled as being fraudulent. So documents that are being faked with the purpose of committing fraud. So especially when you get to around 20% threshold, that is starting to become really serious. I mean, even 5% would be serious if you're processing millions of documents per week or per month. But if you get even higher up with the percentage, it shows you, I think, that the document fraud problem can have really severe operational consequences for the institution involved.
Mm-hmm. And another question that is coming to my mind is that because we have done this in-house, like a lot of kind of research into this different type of fraud as a service, like disinformation as a service or ransomware as a service. A lot of this, we have been seeing a lot of this stuff coming out of the like former Soviet Union states like Ukraine, Russia. It's usually down to the fact that there's usually like a lot of emphasis on this type of IT or this type of education, and there's a lot of this skilled workforce that often works on these state projects sponsored by the government, and then they develop these skills and then they go to the private sector. I don't know if you've seen in your data set any like indications of where these kind of organizations or these groups that are behind these operations, they are kind of where they are based geographically. Do you see any of this in your data?
I think we see, bits and pieces and clues here and there, right? It's definitely not easy to provide an answer to that question, simply because the template farmers, or I think fraud enablers or financial crime enablers in general, if they know what they're doing, they are leveraging the global internet infrastructure, right? So you have servers set up in different regions, you're using VPNs, you're anonymizing all the domain registrations. So very rarely, I think, you can get to real names, or I'm not even saying real faces, of course. At the same time, there are some clues here and there, right? We obviously, the primary goal is to monitor and understand these threats manifesting. At the same time, we still try to, if there is a good piece of actionable evidence, to go we try to investigate some cases in a bit more in depth, right? Something that we, for example, done in January was we published a piece that is trying to sort of track the history of OnlyFake, which is one of the sort of most famous document template providers known within the space. They made a let's say big buzz within the industry, a year and a half ago when there was a different piece written about them, how they're able to generate very convincing fake IDs and sell them for quite cheap. So we decided to sort of really dig into the online footprint of this vendor and see what kind of forums he's been active on and the kind of communication he has been sharing with potential customers. And so there are these clues that it might have been or it might be a group of skilled graphic designers that originated from Russia and at some point maybe realized it's probably better for us to not just provide our fraudulent editing services, but also have our own sort of template shop to go with it, because it's, probably a faster, more profitable business. And they even, they would even sometimes, I think, share information on themselves. They would use these references to a Russian novel, or they would talk about, some level of interaction with, the state potentially. I don't want to go too much deep into that because I don't know if that's going on, but I think it might be. And lastly, of course, the sort of web forums or languages this is all happening in kind of gives you an understanding or where these people might be coming from, simply to how they talk and how they communicate with each other. So I think, again, it's harder to sort of draw any specific conclusions from that. But yeah, if we have a good piece of intel, we definitely would like to know as well who the real actors are behind some of these farms.
And this also leads me to my next question. I really wonder do you have before you set out to do a particular investigation, do you kind of limit yourself consciously in the scope of the investigation, or how far are you then able to also the resources, how far do the resources allow you to go, if you find some interesting thread?
It's a good question. I think, something that I really like about this job is that we are really allowed to do in-depth research that takes months. So, if we had a good story or good pieces of information to maybe base an investigation on, I don't think there's some sort of a time limit we're given in that sense. It's because it's not a commercial project or a commercial investigation that needs to wrap up at a specific point in time. We sort of have the liberty to go as deep as we can, right? But knowing, of course, the ultimate objective, of course, for us is to understand the modus operandi of these fraud enablers. We're not law enforcement, so at the end of the day, we don't have the ultimate goal of tracking these guys down and catching them as much as you would want them to be caught. But we've had some conversations. I think if there ever would be an opportunity to also share some of our findings with those law enforcement agencies or anybody who might be interested in fighting this problem, I think that would definitely be a possibility. And yeah, I think there's actually a couple of investigations we're working on right now, and hopefully whenever we get to some conclusions or some stories, I'll share those with you for sure.
And to play the devil's advocate a little bit, I mean, we kind of spoke about this before we hit the recording button here, but what from the perspective of the banks or whoever's supposed to do this KYC, when these people, let's say they watch your webinar or read some of your reports, why should they actually care? If let's say they kind of it seems to indicate that suddenly 20%, 50 or 15, 10% of their clients are maybe fraudsters. What are the implications of this for the banks or for these entities?
Well, I think There's a number of reasons for why they should care. Simply because things like compliance and adhering to the rule of law is relevant. But also I think, should worry or be very aware of your potential reputational risks here. If you're an institution that's I'm not saying maybe knowingly or unwillingly, but if you become known as an institution that is allowing fraudsters to launder money through your system, you quickly can lose a lot of the credibility you might have. We see it, I think, even with some of the big banks over and over again, and them not sort of committing enough resources or due care to dealing with some of these, let's say, even AML issues and identification of potentially dangerous accounts or transactions. So there definitely is the reputational aspect. But something that we try to emphasize, is even the sort of fraud losses operational aspect, right? If you would have an organized group that would be able to crack your KYC process and commit, mass attacks on your institution in potentially a very short span of time, because we usually see that some of these serial attacks happen in over 24 hours. That could actually, I think, cause quite serious operational problems to your institution if the system is flooded with some of these attacks. So you have obviously that aspect to worry about as well, and for somebody like a lender, if we live now in a world where I think even loan applications, sometimes these institutions are trying to race between each other at who can provide a loan the fastest, right? So it's the whole online, no physical meeting required. You just submit your documents and we're going to approve your loan. Or if you're going to have somebody who's going to use fake documentation to get that loan, however big it might be, well, it's pretty much guaranteed that they're not going to they're going to default on that. They're never going to return the money they've been awarded or approved. So the financial damage aspect comes into play, of course, very much as well.
So there's a plenty of reasons. And just to clarify this, I obviously realize that this is a huge problem and everyone should take it seriously. I just wanted to ask a provocative question. But let me just ask you this one last thing, because you already alluded to this as well, that you are currently looking into something beyond the template farms. Can you maybe give us a little teaser on what you've been up to?
Yeah, so I think, it's sort of a logical progression of our research, right? Because we started with the template farms and the sellers of these document templates. But something that we have been observing recently and focusing on in the last few months is something we found a new term for, something we call account farms, right? And these, as opposed to template farms, are vendors that specialize not in the selling of document templates, but specialize in selling onboarded, verified accounts right off the bat. And there is a logical connection, because I think if you're able to create, fake documents that are going to pass some of these checks, why maybe not try to also start a fraudulent account and sell that for probably much, much higher prices and much bigger profits. So these account farms are definitely a thing, and we have been trying to obviously gather as much data and insights on those as well. And there's a lot of activity going on that is targeting, I think, numerous sectors. Whether it's traditional banks, digital banks, crypto exchanges, remittances, marketplaces, different types of platforms. We've seen accounts being sold for all of these. And obviously we can confirm that 100% of these offerings is legit. There might be some level of scam operations being involved as well, but definitely I think most of these might be legit. And it shows you, how vulnerable some of these KYC processes might be, and why you need to actually, I think, commit some level of attention to the threat intelligence part and understand what is happening and where the threats are coming from. So to wrap this up for you, we are going to have a webinar on this specific issue in about, I think, 3 weeks. So very much inviting everybody to listen to this, because I think we're going to share a lot of interesting insights based on our research from the last 3 months.
I mean, I find this really fascinating because especially because I don't think there's many kind of operators in the field who do this kind of original research. So it's really valuable, I think, for everyone in our space to learn what the threats are, because I feel like a lot of us, we are always kind of like one step or even more steps behind. So it's always really great to just like to kind of hone your skills to understand where the threats are coming from. And so I really appreciate the time that you took to come on the podcast. It's been a really interesting conversation, and I'm looking forward to that webinar.
Thanks again, Philip, for having us. Thanks for the discussion and understanding of the importance of these topics, of course. I think, one last note, because you made me think of that just now, is exactly what you just said. I think the threat intelligence, more than anything, also helps us to understand the sort of behaviors and tactics these guys use. And knowing that is, I think, the first step to not only detecting but preventing financial crime, which I think is the ultimate mission of all of us. So once again, thanks, and looking forward to talking again soon.